Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the canyon. Welcome back to a very canyon thing. We're going to be very canyon today, in which we're putting the chocolate in the peanut butter. We're putting the peanut butter in the chocolate. Two great things that go great together. There's a Quickview in the first half-ish, and there is it came from the workbench installment in the second half, because we are doing a shock, most specifically 10 Pro shocks. We're doing the 10 Pro shock, and then we're going to run it. And we're going to run it on the vehicle that is the topic of It Came From the Workbench, volume 26. Oh, I forgot. 26, episode 4, I want to say is right. Rattle Cat, the gentleman born of strife and conflict, who began as an Red Cat Ascent and now has effectively no Red Cat Ascent remaining. He's his own thing. He's kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. And the way his chassis was constructed, he's pretty well suited to a shock around 100 millimeters. So, before we get into, he will be doing the on-course testing. We'll get a little more into that when we get into that. But for the first half, you know how we do a shocking episode. We get into this forensically. We want to see the numbers. Shocks are all about the numbers. All right, this is the, we spoke about that. We were talking earlier, like 4 seconds ago, about the 10 Pro shock. This is the 10 Pro shock, available only like this. They are sold in pairs, and they come completely assembled. They come assembled and with a fitment of a tightness that would lead you to believe that they filled them with oil, but they are, thankfully for our purposes, not filled with oil. They're completely dry down there. Let us talk about the basic numbers. This shock has an uncompressed length, eye to eye, of 95 millimeters. So if you were to call it a 100, I guess 100 overall, but they are 95 eye to eye, which is fine. And fully compressed, they are 72 millimeters. So at full compression, they are 72 millimeters. And you will note one thing here specifically. This looks too long for this, yes? Yes, because if you push it all the way up, here I am, baby! Which is why the spring cup has this huge built-in thing to stop this going all the way out. This is an emulsion shock. The cap is the two-piece Axial favorite, plastic with a metal collar, and then inside you can just see the hint. There's a land for an O-ring in there. So we then have the requisite bleeder hole in the side of the cap. So these are non-bladdered. These are emulsion. And that's fine. There's nothing explicitly wrong with an emulsion shock. Oh, before I take these apart, there is the spring. You are mono-spec'd. It has a red band, and in Axial, there's the red band. And in Axial, red band means soft, and these are no exception. 9 coils of 0.66 millimeter wire. The spring is 35 millimeters long, has an 11 millimeter ID, which is bigger than usual. We're used to seeing about a 10 millimeter ID, but no need to for consternation too much. Here is a DravTech, and they're a little snug, but I mean, actually, that little bit of snugness is probably better. They fit on both. On both ends, no problem. A little snug, but that's fine. You should get a little less spring talking from the tautness. 1 pound per inch, or close enough to practically be 1 pound per inch, which is pretty soft, and we do like to see soft. 1 pound per inch is going to be a little soft for some builds, but it's better than getting 3.5 pounds per inch, right? Like something that we can't use. The pistons are 3 hole, and I want to point out hole and not slot, though look at the nearly imperceptible amount of material between the hole and the edge of the piston. They could have just been slotted, honestly. This is actually kind of hard to caliper because I keep crushing the sidewall. 7.9 right. So we're going to go, let's call it an average of 7.9, and our inner bore is 8.1. In that 813, yeah, we'll call it about 8.1. So 0.2 millimeter overage, which means we'll probably need a little bit thicker. Like we're not running, well, also with a 3-hole, we're not going to run 20 or 30 weight in these. We're probably going to be in the 40, 50, 60 weight, which is absolutely fine. That's going to be what most people have on hand. With a 1-pound spring, I'm going to guess Purple Juice. And for those of you who don't know what Purple Juice is, low C 40 weight, all the low C shock oils are colored. Low C 40 weight is purple. It looks like grape soda. We have a 58 millimeter long shaft to Axial. What do we to go with a 40 millimeter long body? Off the top of my head, something like a Traxxas GTS will have like a 45 millimeter body with like a 41 millimeter. Oh no, a big bore. A big bore will have a 45 millimeter body and a 41 millimeter shaft. So this is an odd choice. Like were these featured in something else? You are going to have a luxury right now, a luxurious benefit, which is here we've got a little silicone seal, and then we've got a honking spacer in between the seals. Let me keep those organized. And then we have another seal. And then we have a very light, very minimalist shock body. Hard ano, and they are dead. So can we tell how thick? It's 1.5 millimeter wall thickness. 999. You find the right spot in the hard ano and you can get dead 10, but they are consistent. I can't exhibit for you right here calipering all of them because 4 of them are already assembled and on a vehicle, and they are fitted and they are adjusted and they are ready for half 2 of this where we actually do the wheeling part. So what I don't have to do is I'm reaching over the camera, is take my low C Purple Juice. That's not the color of the bottle. That's the color. It's like blueberry syrup. That's the color of the shock oil. It's the TLR 40 weight, 516 CST. I have filled 4 shocks with those. They are fitted with springs appropriate to the vehicle, and they need a little bit heavier than the ones. These are very soft. They will work for a great many people. What I can tell you is from knowledge, from knowledge, right here, we've experienced what I like to call an axial problem, which is these shocks are assembled bone dry as you can make them. So there's quite a bit of stiction going on with the shaft. So for a moment, for a split second, for an instant, you might think, we've got it. We finally found it. We have an axial shock that does not leak. And I assembled the first one, and I filled it with oil, and I did what I usually do, which is I bench cycle it like this. And then I look, and right down here at the base of the shock shaft, right about where the cap is, there was a nice little glimmering silver donut of shock oil. And I went like this, and sure enough, it was purple. So the seals don't match both this inner bore and the size of the shaft. So they don't seal tightly enough on the shaft. Once you have a little bit of this, so you know what? We're here. We spread a little bit of the Protect goo around. This will only take a moment to exhibit. We go seal, we go this, we go this. We tighten this down just a smidge. We'll go down to set it, and then we'll back it off a couple threads, just in case we don't want to cut an O-ring on the way through. So we will put a little juice on there, insert this through here, tighten this down the rest of the way. Once these seals have been greased up, see this right here? If we had a less than 0.2, if we were down into that 0.1, we're talking about tenths of a millimeter here. These shocks leak. They just leak. And fortunately for us out there, this is not a there's nothing you can do situation. Now, these are sold, as I mentioned, only in assembled pairs by Axial, and they are $50 a pair. So I can tell you right now, when they are fully assembled and they are installed on a vehicle, they are appropriately smooth. They are well built. The parts go together nicely. I will now and forever question the length of this shaft for a shock body of that length, but they feel appreciably smooth. They're very good. And here's the problem. Here's the core problem. It isn't even explicitly that they're $50 a pair, though that is a part of it. It's that if I want to make them work, those who know. If you see that color of an O-ring, you know what it is. It's Desert Lizard seals. What is it that repairs leaky axial shocks? Those who know. It is Desert Lizard seals. So, the 4 shocks that are installed on, it came from the Workbench Vol.26 right behind me. And if you can look through, it's a little filled with juice. So I want to get a clear sight picture here. I really can't. There's too much. I used a lot of juice. If I close this down all the way, see the green ring? It will cinch this O-ring down to there's about a 2 millimeter hole for a 3 millimeter shaft. So we loosen it out almost all the way. There's still a little bit of juice on the end will come through, and it's going to push a big plug of it out. In all the way, tighten it down, and this feels... Also, do you hear it anymore? You do not. Because for this shock to function properly, the first thing that you have to do as soon as you get them is completely disassemble them, take the bottom seals out, and replace them with Desert Lizard O-rings. The problem with that being, to my knowledge, Yeah Racing has discontinued the separate seal packs for Desert Lizards. So every time you buy a set of Desert Lizards, you get extra seals. So if you have bought Desert Lizards in the past, you have a set of seals that you can donate to a set of Axial shocks in your life. So if anything, these shocks have brought to us a PSA for Axial shock owners, which is if you own Axial shocks, and I cannot recommend that anyone buy these. These fall into the same category as the factory team Element shocks, which are superb. They are excellent shocks, and they are also tremendously overpriced. At US pricing, they are $90 a set, so $10 cheaper than these, and these are set up for small springs, and the Elements are set up for big springs. Speaking of springs, what did I do with that? I'll just get another one. You shouldn't have to modify your shock straight out of the package when the U.S. domestic market luxury standard, let's call it the luxury standard, is the DravTech, which is going to cost you about $80 a set. So if you want to be a premier shock, you've got to show me what you've got for less than $80. Because as much as people make the peepees and the poo-poos on Desert Lizards, the Desert Lizard is a fantastic shock for the money because it has any number of mounting options. You can run them full droop, half droop, right side up, upside down. They will teach you shock dynamics for about $26 a pair. And if you have Axial shocks somewhere in your life, they come with a second set of seals. So you can build yourself a set of Axial shocks that will actually perform smoothly. Look at that. I have one other, if I can find it. Digging in the drawers. Digging in the drawers. Let me get a spring. So these Axial shocks feel like, you're like, oh, they've finally cracked the code. And they're finally going to give us an Axial shock that doesn't leak. And then you put it together, and here's Axial out of the package. That's just drag on the seals. Dry shaft, dry seals, as soon as they're wet, suddenly it doesn't feel so good. This feels also a little stiction build up there. It's a good shock. It's unconscionable to charge that kind of money for it. I'm going to have a whole drawer full of these. Maybe we will find a shock that needs a slightly smaller. I hold out hope for these because we get all of those China shocks that have 3.5 millimeter pistons. I have this theory that these particular seals are actually suited to a 3.5 millimeter piston. So, cannot recommend. But if you have them, you can fix them with 8 O-rings. And then you're good to go. Springs are good. Quality of the shock is good. Fitment is good. 0.2 millimeter on the piston, on the gap between piston and bore. That's fine. It just means that it's not going to drag. Good sized spacer in between the pistons, because that spacer is really a collar to keep the shock shaft moving straight. It's a quality shock, but the price point is too high. And we kind of expect this when they sell factory shocks like that. But it's the same seals, so where's my drawer? There's my drawer. They're the same as these. These are Axial hundreds. That's the same shaft, isn't it? There's the shaft, isn't it? I'd be willing to bet that's a 58 millimeter shaft. They're just reusing these shafts in a shorter body. So you can see the juice in this. Everything's a little shinier than it should be. They all leak like the bejesus. And I don't have enough desert lizard seals to go around. I don't have enough desert lizard seals to fill them all. Now, I did fill 4 of them, and they are right over here. And now, they're right over here. We have now transitioned into part 2 of this, which is the installment of It Came From the Workbench, Volume 26. This is Episode 4. This is Rattle Cat, as I previously mentioned. Born of Strife, because we went through a whole Red Cat Ascent experiment, and the experiment resulted in this. So I can't be too mad about the Red Cat Ascent, because it birthed something that's really great. The limitations of it are still the fact that there is a trace lineage, the very vertical front shock towers, because of the placement of the front motor mount. I mean, of course, now I could replace that front motor mount with something more sensible, and then it would get these out of the way, and then I could remanufacture chassis. I don't feel like making another set of chassis rails. This vehicle drives pretty nicely because it's on Vanquish F10s. I fabricated a laydown servo mount for an RS700. In betwixt now, which is now, and when anyone saw this previously, the wheelbase has been lengthened by 15 millimeters. I had completely forgotten that the Red Cat Ascent has a roughly 300 millimeter wheelbase, between 300 and 305. It is now sitting at about a 318 millimeter wheelbase. I stretched the rear as far as I could. We actually bottom out on the back of the chassis, the little red guy, boop, he gets right there. It is also now stretched to the point where he really needs 100 or bigger, but we're also here to test these. He is running 2 pound per inch in the rear and 1.2 pound per inch in the front. We still have a little bit of axle oddity because the chassis was designed and built when it still had Red Cat axles under it, and now it has F10s. So we have a little bit of can you see right there? Yes, you can. This, you should basically not be able to see the panhard. But because this attachment point, its location relative to this, and the little tweakery of it, I think I might be able to work my way around it by changing the servo horn yet again, but the servo horn gets me pretty close to parallel this way. So it is a dance. As I said, every link was changed to stretch the wheelbase. The shocks were installed. 95s appear to be perfect for the front of this. I was granted these shocks sent in by channel member, and as it is a mythical land, the mythical land of Michigan, I will call him the king of the mythical land of Michigan. He sends many things into the canyon. He sent in these 10 Pro shocks. He also sent in these Vanquish wheels. So Rattle Cat has the honor of being the first and only Canyon resident fitted with actual Vanquish wheels. It's our first set. It's our only set. It will probably be our last set because around these parts, we don't spend that kind of money on wheels. I had to change out the drive shafts. The front was okay. I didn't stretch the front that much. The rear was suddenly too short, so I had already purchased another to replace the top. I used the new one to make a new rear, and I turned the rear into the top. So now we have matchy-matchy drive shafts. And if you have matchy-matchy drive shafts, it gets pretty quiet. It's nice. So, for the purposes of this episode, depending on what the filming schedule looks like outside, depending on how this goes, he's going to go like this for the remainder of the episode. There is the potential possibility that his rear shocks will be replaced because I have this spare pair of, these are GTS long arms, so these are 110s. And if you'll notice, if we put that in that position, it will put us right in the middle of the shock holes. We would have been right in the middle of the shock holes, and then I pushed the rear axle back about 12 millimeters when I went to a high clearance link on the back. For those who watched the This or That episode, which was like an unofficial, that would have been episode volume 26, episode 3.5, where we went through the inserts and we landed on these Brorb RC 3D printed inserts specifically for these tires. And I have spoken about how these tires, Injora, with their love of the 35 millimeter tire, they are better suited to a skinny beadlock ring, the inner ring. So they want a skinnier wheel. Doubly fortunate, these are skinnier wheels. These have a 19 millimeter beadlock ring, and the wheels that were on here previously look like this, and they have a the more standard 24 millimeter beadlock ring. So you can definitely see sidewall crowning, and there's none. They're just straight up and down. Also, if you saw this versus that, the Injora insert on this wheel, this is heavy. So we sacrificed a bunch of unsprung weight previously, and we have definitely not put any of that weight back on. If anything, the little tweaks and twists and turns in the work that was done to get it into the configuration that it is right now took some weight off. This vehicle, RTR, as it sits right now, that's not true, as it is going to sit right now. We'll plug them up, plug them up, plug them in. Because I think it might be the Canyon followers' second favorite body. For some of you out there, it might be your first favorite. This is Rattle Cat's skin. And it's just me talking, but I think he looks more to scale now. What a difference, eh? Push that rear axle back a hair, and I think it looks more to scale now. Very truggy. And as sitting right here with everything installed, 4.99 pounds as configured. Look at that. Look at that straight shot all the way through, because we turned a normal gearbox into basically a diggable transfer case. Just goes straight through. So here's the guy. I have no idea. The last time I wheeled him was this or that. And he has been canyon changed, in which we make one change, because if they're all stuck together, it's technically one nacho. And if you make all of your changes in one sitting and don't go back outside, it's technically one change. So we have only made one change. The only change we made was all of the links, the drive shafts, the wheels. I think that's mostly it. Oh, and he's wider. We went from a 9 millimeter SLW to 14s. So he is 10 millimeters wider because, and others agree, if you're going to go longer, you go a little bit wider at the same time. It also actually improved his clearance in the front. Oh, because the front axle pushed out as well. So we're what is that? We're 10 millimeters wider, so he is 9 3/4. Dead on 9 3/4 in the rear, and he's dead on 9 3/4 in the front, which is, for the rest of the world, I've already lost it, just under 250, 247 or so. And I want to say that the wheelbase was 318, is that what I said? Yeah. Could be 317. 317, 318. So we stretched him between 13 and 15 millimeters. And I say that as a guess because I didn't measure him before. I thought he was at 313 before, and I thought I was going to come out at like 325. But we just went above 12.3, above 313. So we're going to find out how we do. One of the lightest vehicles in the canyon now, and he is deceptive because that is a tall body, but he has no weight up top. He's a flyweight boy. And let us see, when we made all the changes, including the shocks, I am most anxious. Oh, yeah, and as I had mentioned, 1.2 in the front because they're straight up and down, and 2 pounds in the back because, baby, that's got to be at 45 degrees. Clearances on all the pumpkins are great. That angle looks a little steep, but then when you get it to compression, say we had to, because he's got some weird geometry in the rear. It's a little bit weird, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So, second most, we are out here to look at how these shocks are performing. And I put it as second most because I have very basic qualifications for a shock. Does it hold on to the oil that you put inside of it? And does it fit the vehicle that you're putting it on? The answer to the first one is, in the condition out of the package, no. And to the second one, sort of. The fronts are about right. The rears are not long enough, and that is not the fault of the shock. It just happens to be the vehicle that was chosen to test them. Like damping, compression and rebound and all that stuff, that is all in your control because it is your selection of spring and your selection of oil. You don't want the damping so slow that it's causing judder or shudder or jump, and you don't want the springs too hard because then it's going to cause shudder or judder or jump. And you don't want no springs at all because springs provide a resistive force. If you're side hilling with no springs on, or what people would call full droop, then you've killed your breakover and your ground clearance because there's nothing to keep the sprung weight above minimum ride height. So springs are important. We can watch the springs acting there in the back. I'm trying to get over a little bit to right about there. That is the hard pull zone. Oh! Yeah, a shuttle, if we pull over here, is going to be super easy. Pick whatever sideline you want. Yeah, that shock action looks great on the back. 2 pounds. I could maybe even go up to a DravTech Hard, which is 2.3. I think we could use a little bit more in the back. Let me see. There's no real jump or hop. Try a full shuttle across here. I want to see that rear. So we've got one side collapsed. Extension looks good. Yeah, it is a shock that, as I said, it is well made and well constructed. And then they threw in the 10 Pro shock would be a recommendation from me, potentially, even at the $50 price point, if they had machined a piston, they had included a shock shaft that is the correct length for the shock body, and they had changed out the O-rings and not just dug into the Axial massive barrel O-rings to ship out more leaky shocks. I mean, performance-wise, appearance-wise, they look great. Performance-wise, they're great. The question that can't be answered in this short of a period of time on a shock is, how are they going to do a year from now? Well, you won't be using your 10 Pro shocks a year from now unless you change the seals in them because they are going to continue to leak on you. They are as smooth as we would expect them to be. Just watch the front end just... They do the things that shocks are supposed to do. The problem with that being, you can do the things shocks are supposed to do for half the money. Less than half the money. So there has to be a reason, there has to be a specific reason to buy these. And try as I may and try as I might, I can't figure out what that is. If these were $30 a pair, maybe. But not $100 a set. Yeah, I understand. Things out there exist. Velvets exist. Chronics exist. But the chronic and the velvet are shocks for people who like really expensive watches. Because a Casio that you bought for $29.99 is probably going to keep better time. There's nothing you can do to a shock to take it to that price point and justify that price point. If they made a claim that this shock will never leak, but these shocks are $100 a pair, sliders in, I still wouldn't buy them. I will take a little bit of leaking in order to get 2, 3, 4 sets of shocks for the same amount of money. And these, at $100 a set, oh, they're gonna leak. They're gonna leak straight out of the package. There's no question about it. Those are axial seals on axial shafts, and they don't fit together. You know what I love? First and foremost, we've surpassed second and second most. First and foremost, those wheels look fantastic with that body. And, I mean, it's a Gulf livery. We got to have some orange wheels on right there. They probably call them gold. I hope they call them orange, because on no planet is that gold. But they look great on there. And yeah, that's it. They look great on there. Oh, yeah, the other thing. I don't have to worry about the vehicle. The changes to the rig seem to be the rare and elusive net sum good. This is doing everything that I'm asking it to. It doesn't explicitly feel like it weighs 5 pounds. It drives real nice. So I can concentrate on the shocks, which are, doing shock things. So maybe a little bit of side hill. Maybe we'll hit some gates. And I mean that metaphorically. We'll run some gates. Try to hit as few as possible. What's the rise going to be here? We want to see, where do we get before we roll out? This is so right here, we'll get right here. This right there, see that tire lift? This is where no spring on the bottom side is not going to help you. And it will be worse in here. Because I can see shock shaft on passenger rear, which means we're not collapsed all the way over, which is easy for us to do because our shock is laid down at a 45-degree angle. So it's much more difficult for a side force like this to compress the shock, even though the rate acts softer. The effective rate is softer. So we keep getting that high side. It just wants to set it down. This is me trying to get used to driving a vehicle that weighs 5 pounds. You get into the right spot, and that's all cross weight right there. If you were to approach that vehicle and you were to put your finger under the passenger front tire, it would require effort to try to lift it. That should be the lightest tire on the vehicle, because geometry is transferring the force from the passenger rear into the driver rear, and then cross weight, the triangulation, is pushing the weight from the driver rear into the passenger front. So what we have is stability. That's how you get stability. And if your shock is long enough and your suspension geometry is set up sort of okay, that is the configuration you get. If you are in that situation where that front side is up and you're lifting that wheel, then you know that fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, you get to do some math. So let's hit or not hit some gates, as may be the case. And due to the position of the morning sun, well, let me show you. Here's where I am. So I still say it's a valuable skill to learn. Drive your vehicles from very far away. You will learn the ins and outs of those vehicles. Yeah, this feels nice. Okay, if we clear the front lip, okay, what we don't want is a slide down. We gonna touch? No, man. Oh. As soon as I said, nah, man, we did touch. This is the beauty of the ball gate. You can touch it. You can touch it all you want. You just can't knock it off. And these are gate revision. I've lost track. I bought a giant onion bag full of golf balls. And these are, I guess you would call them recycled golf balls. As they were under 50 cents a ball. And I'm not a golfer, but I know that golf balls can trend into the expensive. I thought to myself, I will order some golf balls because I think they're probably about the same size as the wooden balls that we're using. Yes, they are. They are also, I think, more weather resistant. They don't need to be painted, and you will see in future installments, it's fantastic. Oh, there's like a third thing hidden inside this. We've got Quickview. We've got, it came from the workbench. We've also got me talking about golf balls. They make a great course marker because they'll hold up well. They are neon yellow. I mean, they definitely show up. Went with fire engine red. Actually, it's Rust-Oleum safety red for the bases. I think they look great. If you buy an onion bag full of golf balls on Amazon, they are recycled. So there's a bunch of used. They're all used. And people get their golf balls personalized. So out here, right now, this golf ball says Z-Star. I don't know if that's just a type of that ball or what. Off to the right, out of frame, there's a golf ball named Eric. It says Eric on it. We have another golf ball that says Judy, Judy, Judy on it. Okay. We have another one that says Lovely Jubbly. And the one right next to Lovely Jubbly says, Hans, Booby, I'm your white knight. And if you can get a bag of golf balls from Amazon and one of the golf balls has a die-hard quote on it, they call that winning. So house side, okay, we are on the side. That entry, nope. That entry was so bad. So bad. And the marker named Eric is categorically a problem. I have hit it every time I have tried to go through the gate. Every single time. Eric is inevitable. Can we get past Z-Star here? I need to look. Get that cab up. Oh, is that going to be too much? Oh yes, the added bonus / nightmare of the golf ball. People had said, well, maybe make some tethers. These golf balls, if they hit a rock on the way down, yeah, they're gone. You're doing a lot of walking with these things out here. Okay, I've swapped the balls. I moved Z-Star up to the top. Still a little hang up on that link. There we go. I want to see if Z-Star is the one that has the curse in it. Okay, if we can pull, okay, if that tire comes straight over, oh, ooh, there's a little pop back. Now, the exit on this gate, you always think, oh, I've got it. and then your rear end slides down. Now that's why I moved Z-Star from the low position, because I see he. Oh. Need to get that front. Oh yeah. Yeah. These gates are great. Whoever thought of these gates might be some kind of savant. We're not going to go to genius. Let's not get silly. So I and some other local experts agreed on a course realignment. This is formerly gate 2. This is now gate 5 at the front 9. Get over the edge. A little Lexan noise. You got to stay high. I'm going to get up over there like that and breeze. And if this guy can make it look that easy, you know something's working. The shocks are 100% working. They are definitely working. To the point where I think I need to do a thing. I think I need to drive this gentleman back to the shop. I need to leave the cameras right where they are. While that maneuver that I just accomplished right there is fresh in your eyes and my mind, I am going to put those Traxxas GTS on the back of this, get the ride height to look about the same, and then I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to see if it feels any different at all. I did indeed opt for DravTech hards for the back, so we've gone up from 2 pounds to 2.3. Am I too far over? No. This is definitely an instance of, it feels different. It feels a little different. It doesn't feel bad, it just feels different. It doesn't feel good, it just feels different. It's the same, but not. And doubly tough. This is doubly tough. The fitment of a 95, there's quite a few vehicles out there that can fit a 95. But in many Axial and Vanquish vehicles that come with 90s, I end up putting 80s on them. And some of the vehicles that come with 80s, I end up putting 90s on them. Or going from a 90 to an 85. I'm trying to think of an instance where I've gone from a 90 to a 95. And I really haven't. This one, the rear end geometry much suits that 110 better than it did the 95. So in that instance. But the smoothness of this GTS with a mini spring on it is identical. The feel of it that way, it's identical. And this type of shock is available. Now, there are a lot fewer builds that are going to fit a 110. You can't just take a 90 millimeter fitted vehicle and put a 110 on it. It's going to kill the geometry. Get a second hit. Yeah, see, something about the rear end, and I can't say that it's not just going up. So what is 0.316? 15%. We went up about 15% in rear spring rate. Maybe that 15% in rear spring rate is making the biggest difference, and it has nothing to. The shaft in the shock that's on the back of this is shorter than the shaft that's on the shock in front of it. And look at the length. These are 110s. So basically, we have a shaft for a 110 in a 95 on the front, and we have a shaft for a 110 and a 110 on the back. No, I don't know. I think it is a little more planted. Oh, you know what we can do? Gate 4 is the trixiest of all available hobbits. Let's head over to 4. See how I feel about 4. Maybe that will be the determiner. Now this is gate 4 at the front 9, or as we call it, Judy, Judy, Judy. And it is either very easy for some rigs, and for some other rigs it is very vexing. There's something about the brokenness of the surface on the approach. You've got to try to get as close to stripes as you can so that you don't flop over into the eponymous eponymous? Eponymous. I think it's eponymous. Trying to get that front end to settle. Okay, now if we don't drag belly here, there we go. Yeah, this setup, we've crippled the bees and taken all of their knees. It's pretty good. Again, I will reiterate, we're in full It Came From the Workbench mode right now. But I will reiterate on the topic of the 10 Pro shocks. I don't recommend these as a purchase because they're $50 a pair. $100 a set is rarefied air, and I don't see it. You can get, well, you know, there's plenty of people out there tuning fake DravTechs and are all in for $40. Is there a performance advantage of these over the others? No. These GTS that are on the rear, so we've got a split now, if you're following. Those GTS have element seal retainer cups at the bottom so that I can just run the springs easily without having to resort to a lathe. The cups on the element skinnies, on GTS, on a number of shocks are just interchangeable from shock to shock. What is on the bottom of the 10 Pros at the front are parts for 10 Pros. I don't even know if you can buy the plastics. The cups are very specific and they have to have that spacer in them because the shaft is so long. The 10 Pro shock is like a work in progress shock, and for that kind of money, everything you need, everything you ever need should come in the package. So it's on the cost alone. Oh, that's driving. Woo, baby. Yeah, this is potentially log status. This is better than bad. It is good. And we're in a very good place here, canyon-wise, because as I had mentioned earlier, I was sent 6 of those 10 Pro shocks, and now this vehicle has 2 on it, so I have 4 more. I will happily mount them to another vehicle, but I cannot recommend it $100 a set. That's bananas. If you have that kind of money to spend, either buy DravTechs or buy 2 of something else. Buy 2 sets of GTS. There you go. It Came From the Workbench. We out. Quickview. We out. It's all we all good. Look at this. That is some. Look how flat he sits. Look how good those wheels look. Look how nice this boy is today. Rattle Cat. All 4.99 pounds of him. You know what? I do acknowledge that we may have picked up a gram when we went to the 110s. We might be 5.0 or like 5.03 or something. That means I'm going to have to find a part on him somewhere and replace it with something lighter. We're going to have to drill some holes. I want to stay at 5 pounds. It's irrational now. Here's something that's not irrational. I instruct you, one and all, as an instructor of sorts, that in between now and when we meet again, to please, one and all, do your very best to have a good one, everybody. Check out the links or subscribe or do all of the YouTube things. Just keep in the back of your mind the YouTube things. We'll see you next time with whatever we have next. 10 Pro shocks, great, but not for that much. Rattle Cat, awesome, regardless of what he was or is or will be. I think he's close. Genuinely, this guy is close to, if he's not close, he is him that does not need anything further. I can't really think of it. I'm going to fuss with that front end a little bit until I get those links straighter. I don't notice the bump steer or the axle swing or any of that in operation, but it's one of those things that it scratches at the back of your brain. So we'll see if I can address it. What I'm going to address right now is telling y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time. We're going to drive out of frame. Whee!